Good evening, and welcome to the 2021 RAIC Annual Awards Virtual Celebration. My name is John Brown, and as President of the RAIC, I'm honored to act as tonight's Master of Ceremonies. Throughout the evening, we will be celebrating and hearing from the recipients of each of our annual awards, as well as a special presentation to honor our gold medal recipients, Bridget Shim and Howard Sutcliffe. Even though tonight's ceremony is virtual, the RAIC as an organization operates out of Ottawa, Ontario, and I would like to take this time to recognize that Ottawa is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. As I am located in Calgary, I acknowledge and pay tribute to the people of Treaty 7, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. The City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3, and by the signing of Treaty 7 in 1877, we recognize that all Albertans are treaty people. On behalf of everyone participating in this event, I extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. The mission of the RAIC is to promote excellence in the built environment, demonstrate how design enhances the quality of life, and advocate for socially and environmentally responsible architecture. This evening, we celebrate those who exemplify these goals, both in the quality of their work and their huge personal commitment to achieving excellence. I would also like to recognize V2Com as our awards program media partner. Thank you to Ms. Julie Payette, partner at V2Com Newswire, for the promotion and celebration of tonight's event. And finally, the RAIC is pleased to recognize GlasCurtain as our event sponsor for this evening. I now invite Mr. Peter Dushenski to say a few words and share his thoughts with you all tonight.
Hello and welcome to the RAIC Award Celebration 2021. My name's Peter Dushenski, and I'm the Managing Director of GlasCurtain. We're a Canadian manufacturer of fiberglass framed curtain wall systems for triple glazed applications, and we're very proud to sponsor this annual recognition of excellence in Canadian architecture. But you might be wondering, what does excellence mean today? Energy codes are becoming more stringent, tariffs are a continual concern, our population is growing at the same time as our environmental conscientiousness is in the ascent. And I'm not being gloomy, quite the contrary, because today's award winners are that much more impressive for the mountains they've climbed to build not only code-compliant buildings, but buildings that are beautiful showcases that create long-lasting, positive community impact. These award winners show us all what's possible with the power of persistence and creativity. With that, I'd like to wish a wholehearted congratulations to the winners of this year's prestigious event. You all very much deserve the recognition and respect of your peers. You've earned it. Pour nos amis francophones, félicitations aux gagnants de l'événement cette année. Vous méritez tous la reconnaissance et le respect de vos pairs. Vous l'avez mérité. On behalf of all of us at GlasCurtain, we hope you enjoy this important recognition of excellence this evening. Merci et bonne soirée.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first honor of the evening, the RAIC Gold Medal. The RAIC Gold Medal is the highest honor and distinction that the Institute can bestow, and it recognizes the significant and lasting contributions of an individual or individuals to Canadian architecture. We are honored in 2021 to award the innovative architectural partnership of Bridget Shim and Howard Sutcliffe with the Gold Medal. The jury said of our recipients, by their relentless pursuit of excellence, Bridget Shim and Howard Sutcliffe have produced a significant body of exceptional design works covering architecture, landscape, interior furniture, and hardware. All developed to an incredibly high standard with craft, rigor, sense of place, and mastery of proportion. Their work demonstrates a dedication to material expression and exquisite detailing across multiple scales, in addition to creating an intimate connection with each site. We wish to recognize them as a powerful collaborative duo whose commitment to craft, tectonics, site, and ecology will have a lasting impact on Canadian architecture. To further illuminate their tremendous careers, I now welcome Bridget Shim and Howard Sutcliffe to the virtual stage.
I'm Bruce Kuwabara, partner at KPB Architects. This is wonderful to be here in your studio, and I'd like to start just by asking you, what does it mean to you to win the RAIC gold medal?
Well, I would have to say both of us are really thrilled. We're really honored to receive the respect and appreciation from your peers is so meaningful to both of us.
Being an architect's hard work, and you kind of work and you don't really know what people think about your work, really. I mean, it's sort of out there, and you have relationships with clients, but when your peers actually acknowledge, especially peers you really respect, acknowledge that the work you've done actually means something to them as well, that's a pretty good thing.
Can you share with us how you work and shape your buildings?
So we're in a space in downtown Toronto. It was a former garage. We've inhabited since 1994. We have a lot of stuff here. And this is where we meet with our clients, our fabricators, our studio members. We build models, we sketch. There are a lot of full-size mock-ups, prototypes all over the place. And the space has been really important for us because it's such a simple space, and it's really allowed us to really experiment and to shape the buildings that we've designed.
You know, Bridget and I have been together since school, basically since the graduation. And so we've kind of grown up together in a way, and so certainly professionally grown up together as well as our life. But I think the fact that we've been in close proximity, we've traveled together, we've seen many buildings, we've worked on all these complex projects where you go through all these ups and downs, and you kind of go through the rough bits as well as the good bits together. It's kind of a remarkable life, actually. I mean, it's a life in architecture.
Yeah, I think that's really at the core of your practice. There are two of you, and there have been many other collaborators and different clients, but the constant is the two of you. And so if you look back at all of the things you've done, is there something where you said, we turned a corner, or this one was really important because we discovered something?
I would say we've never considered any one project to define our entire body of work. That for us, the oeuvre, the kind of range of projects for us is more important than any one singular project. And I think that may be different from other firms where there isn't a kind of defining project that encompasses everything that we are interested in, and that each one is important because it takes on this new territory and it enables us to continue to experiment.
The first project, which I think you were kind of pretty aware of that process for Barbara From when we were working on that project. In kind of retrospect, it was kind of a key project for us because it kind of encompassed this kind of it was essentially a landscape project in many ways, and so it kind of encompassed this kind of issue of really thinking about the landscape and some kind of furniture aspects without having a big kind of architectural component to it, because it was really more of a landscape project. So that in kind of retrospect, I think, ended up being many of the interests we pursued later on. And the idea of also of kind of ruins and kind of like walls, which became sort of like were the base, maybe pre-existing or something that could be made. So then I'd say the next project in that kind of evolution would probably be our own house, which is continue to kind of feed us as a kind of project, and we've used it in various kind of iterations throughout our career, actually, both in urban and more rural projects. And then there were certain moments where I think the scale went up a bit, like the Weathering Steel house for David and Yvonne Fleck, I think was our first kind of more serious house. I mean, it was a pretty big project and it was pretty ambitious. And I think that allowed us to kind of think about, maybe a range of rooms and things that could be a bit more extensive than, let's say, our own house.
I'd like to talk about education and really, I'd say how you think about and how you value architectural education and the importance of it. Like, does it matter? How does it matter to you?
I've been teaching at the Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design at the University of Toronto since 1988, so that's a while, and I feel totally committed to the education of the next generation. I feel that's so important for the future of architecture. When I set a studio problem, I actually don't think of it as an academic problem in a kind of school context. I actually want my students to think about issues and to provide design solutions that can shape the future of our cities. And if they don't think in those terms, then I feel that we as architects will never really make the difference that we should.
Howard, you once talked about how you see the possibilities for the kind of work that you're doing to build community and to really involve people who are working and fabricating and building your projects in a very different way in the face of what we see as being a much more generic and frankly alienated process of design and construction, where you never meet anybody who's actually doing the work or making anything. The projects are just so large. So can you expand on that?
So I think fairly early on we were interested in the idea of the mark of the hand, and that immediately meant that you needed to have a relationship with the person making the thing, because it was really a made thing as opposed to a purchased thing or a machine fabricated thing. And as a result of that basic interest, I think we then developed a ton of people we work with over 30 years that we have very strong relationships with. Then couple that with the possibility of the new fabrication techniques. I think there's interesting ways of making buildings which are very specific, have the mark of the fabrication condition in it, whether it's the people making it or the 3D printing or whatever it is, and make really particular things.
I mean, I've always thought about your different journeys to work together, starting from the University of Waterloo, but then Arthur Erickson, sort of Ron Tom, George Baird, Barton Myers, and in those four figures, it's a kind of interesting set of perspectives on architecture in Canada and architecture in cities. And
the kind of experience of working for Arthur Erickson's office in Vancouver was really important. I had actually never been in an architecture office with so many women before, ever. I had been a Waterloo co-op student and had many different placements, but you're like the only female architect, and Vancouver's Laurel Street office of Erickson's in the early 80s was just a whole other world. It was just eye-opening for me. Working for George Baird and Barry Sampson at Baird Sampson Architects was so essential in terms of forming my kind of understanding of the relationship between architecture and culture, and both of those experiences really helped to shape our way of thinking.
My experience as a recent graduate, I first started off working for Ron Tom and worked there for a couple of years. And his approach to architecture was completely intuitive and kind of, I couldn't really quite understand how he got to where he was going, because it was totally internal and kind of intuitive. And then having gone from there to Barton Myers' office, it was the opposite. It was rigorous and like disciplined, and it was planned. It was, Lou Kahn was the kind of primer, kind of like the figure behind the scenes, and it was pretty interesting. There was a kind of rigor of investigation, both in terms of the kind of planimetric condition, but also in terms of materials and conditions. And I think, and then then working with you, Bruce, for another 8 years probably after that, that continued on, that kind of rigor of those kind of exercises. And I think for me it's probably an interesting kind of combination of having these two completely different worldviews of architecture and trying to reconcile it, I guess, in my own head and how we worked. But I think they both had, I think in the end, I think that kind of family tree of kind of Ron Tom and Barton and you, Bruce, and then our own thing is kind of part of the kind of cultural history of the architectural condition. And I think the fact that we now all received gold medals, I think, is also super interesting. And hopefully the people that work for you and the people that work for us will get those gold medals in 10 years from now, right? And I think that's really kind of important as part of a discussion about the cultural kind of condition of Canadian architectural practice.
How you see architecture in Canada and its relationship to the world. Are there lessons from here, or are there lessons from out there that Canada should really pay attention to?
In a way, what I take inspiration from is, we have a very small practice, but we've had many remarkable people that have been part of our studio. And they have both learned from us, but I feel like they are doing amazing work, and that I feel that they hold the promise of the next generation. So I think that we really need to invest in our younger emerging architects, because that's really essential to continuing this kind of cultural discourse of architecture.
The generations in architecture, I think, are kind of shorter than regular generations. It's like a 10-year period. I mean, here we're sitting talking to you. We work together, and we both work for Barton. So it's kind of 10-year increments of these kind of generational conditions. So that the people who worked here now have practices and they're producing work. But I think that generally the aspiration has to be at a high aspiration, has to be cultural, and it has to be committed. I mean, architecture is a complicated life. I mean, it really is a life. It's not a job, and it's a kind of commitment to something that's kind of abstract but meaningful to a lot of people. And I think it needs to be really supported in many ways, because it's a tough one.
But I would say one of the important things is you feel like you're part of a community. You have mentors, you have people that you really respect, and there's a kind of cross-generational conversation through the built work. And I think that, in a way, for us, that's so important, related to the RAIC gold medal, that the list of the previous recipients are really so impressive, and they each have really made a really important contribution to architecture in Canada. So in a way, we feel so honored to be really part of that list of really remarkable.
Yeah, I think that's the privilege. I mean, basically, the fact that there's people you really respect have won the award, and I think that to receive it ourselves, that's why it's such a powerful thing, right? Because it's all those people you respect.
And this issue of climate, place, craft, it seems to me that those three terms are constantly running through the work, ever increasing intensity through the work of Shim Sutcliffe architects. And I think that that's one thing that one can't possibly miss anymore, particularly after Bridget's amazing presentation this morning, or rather, I think this morning for us, but in fact, of course, middle of the night for you. But in any case, so I suppose one of the things that is very, very striking, and I think is unique in a way to the Shim Sutcliffe practice, is this, not only this respect for craft, but also the kind of built-in capacity for craft itself. And of course, there's an amazing, rather dramatic, you could say, polemical shot of Howard Sutcliffe actually cutting oxyacetylene lamp, cutting steel. I mean, this is in a way, it's kind of the almost symbol of the practice, I would say. This not only this respect for craft, but actually literal hands-on capacity for craft. But the interest of the architects in materiality and in the expressivity of materiality is very evident also in these bricks and the way the bricks are treated. I mean, in some cases glazed, in some cases sandblasted. This kind of, I don't know how to call it exactly, this kind of penetration into the nature of a material is exceptional, I think. And probably as far as North American architecture is concerned, the Shim Sutcliffe practice is unique. I think in the depth of its penetration into material, Bridget referred to many other things besides material, above all, of course, to climate and to light, to nature, to placemaking, rather than freestanding aesthetic objects. Quite astonishing, I think, is the way this syncopation functions as a light filter, and the way in which the character of the space, the feeling of the space, is totally transformed by the seasons. So that the changing light during the daily cycle and the changing light during the seasons, the syncopation of the form is particularly tuned so that it reveals nature. This nature-culture relationship takes on a particular intense quality at this point. Is that when one looks back into a certain time of the year, and maybe perhaps even the worst time of the year, the house is not an object anymore. The house is not an object. It was never really conceived as an object. Of course, you can say, well, this is a tautology. It is, after all, an object, but it's not conceived as, that's the important issue, I think. It's not conceived as a freestanding aesthetic object. It's conceived as a reflexive object in relation to nature. So this nature-culture thing is present, of course, very much through light, but through its own inherent nature. This question of the digital and the computer, and I noticed that Bridget said we don't do computer drawings. I find it hard to believe. I mean, they must at some point enter into computer drawings, but in any case, it's clear that the office still, the practice still emphasizes drawing as a way of thinking. It looks as though it's always been there. I mean, this idea that something looks as though it's always been there. I mean, I think that probably is inseparable from the notion of creating a place, of placemaking. So that you could argue maybe Point William, the buildings on Point William look as though they'd always been there, because of the way they've been developed in relation to each other and to the site, makes them look like that. And this reminded me of Auguste Perry's remark, where he gives a positive connotation to the word banal. He defines banal as, it looks as though it's always been there. I think that's an incredible, it's an extraordinary thing to arrive at, I think.
Thank you, Bridget and Howard, for your enlightening and insightful thoughts this evening. I would now like to introduce the winners of the following 3 awards. MGA Michael Green Architecture for the Architectural Firm Award, Lecky Studio Architecture and Design for the Emerging Architectural Practice Award, and Anya Moriosef for the Emerging Architect Award.
We are honored to receive the 2021 RAIC Firm Award. The award acknowledges that architecture is a team sport, and we could not agree more.
At MGA, we believe that thoughtful and effective design is influenced by the sum of our collective experiences.
We are so proud of our team, both current and past members.
And this award is a tribute to them all.
Our firm's mission is the pursuit of meaningful impact
that improves the lives of our clients and communities,
as well as the health of our planet.
That pursuit has led us to innovations and designs
we are proud to have contributed to and championed.
We love collaborating with our teams and clients, our engineers, consultants, and our community.
And we are proud of the work we have done
and continue to do together.
We take inspiration from nature itself,
tackling the most pressing global, environmental, and social challenges
through a balance of science and beauty,
adaptable design, and practical solutions.
We do not view buildings as fashion.
Instead, designing for longevity,
changing uses, and timeless warmth.
These values reside at the core of our process,
where the simplest solutions often require
the greatest care and thoughtfulness.
We believe in the voice and impact of the architecture profession
and our collective ability to shape legacy and meaning in our daily decisions.
Because architecture is about legacy.
We know MGA is the product of voices past and present.
Everyone made us who we have become.
In essence, our practice is motivated by the idea
that the only thing stopping us from changing the world
is the assumption that someone else will.
So we gratefully accept this award with a challenge to you all.
Join us as advocates for lasting positive change.
Committed to looking beyond traditions and challenges.
By designing solutions that push boundaries and bend rules.
And together, let's redefine the practice of architecture.
It is an honor to be a part of this great community and a privilege to receive this year's RAIC Architecture Firm Award.
Thank you.
The RAIC Emerging Practice Award is an enormous honor for the studio. I've always felt as if we've been practicing in the margins, being very intentional about finding creative opportunities to practice our craft, and even inventing these opportunities at times. It's affirming to understand that the work that we're doing is resonating and finding meaning with the larger group of our peers across the country. This year, the studio will celebrate its 6th anniversary, and I'm very proud of what the studio team has been able to accomplish in that short time frame, a very short time frame in architectural standards. On the one hand, we're operating at a relatively modest and humble scale, and on the other, we're constantly seeking opportunities to challenge the conventional norms and boundaries of traditional architectural practice through design research and creative entrepreneurship. I've always felt that Canada has a very strong design culture with a huge number of individuals and practices operating across our vast landscape. And we're constantly inspired to be part of this community and admiring the work of our fellow peers. We've been fortunate to have great mentors who've taught us that a good design practice operates without ego and places clients and stakeholders first. A practice that values diversity and inclusion in culture and workplace, that pays its interns, and refuses to work with companies that do harm. We strive to live the values that we would like to see in the world, and we provide financial support to those companies that are like-minded and working towards positive change, including diversity, inclusion, environmental activism, and food security. In the studio, we believe that all architectural work is a form of speculation. As architects and designers, we are visualizing and dreaming about a possible future, a future that creates benefit for individuals and communities that come into contact with our work. And we work hard to realize this vision. It's through the hard work of many hands, collaborators, stakeholders, clients, that we're able to realize this vision. So we're very grateful for all the hard work of the collaborators that make the work possible, and especially grateful for all of our clients who believe in the vision. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the jury and the RAIC for this award. In a year where our lives have become so isolated, spending more time inside and less time with one another than ever before, applying for this award caused me to reflect on the central importance of personal relationships in our business. In this context, it's about the people who make the work: clients, colleagues, builders, consultants, suppliers, fabricators, mentors, friends, family. There is no architecture without a significant and lasting investment in those relationships. My application was specifically about the relationships with those who've shaped me, both creatively and professionally. Olena Vogelnist, Marilyn Berkovich, Bob Wilger, Donald Mackay, Sarah Wigglesworth, Renee Searle, Meg Graham, Andre D'Elia, Jana Levitt, Dean Goodman, and Eric Beck-Rubin. Their support and mentorship is in my work. It is specifically in the places I look for beauty, and it is in the empathy with which I try to engage all of my clients in collaborations, and the way this empathy is translated into the work. And finally, their support is in the resilience that it takes to create something whose existence often seemed so tenuous up until the moment it was inhabited and completed. Thank you.
It is a distinct pleasure to honor the RAIC's counterparts from other countries with the RAIC's President's Medal and Honorary Membership in the RAIC. The President's Medal acknowledges the vital role the President plays in carrying out an architectural organization's vision and goals, and it recognizes their outstanding contribution to architecture and architects. The recipients of the President's Medal for 2021 are Peter Exley, FAIA, President, American Institute of Architects; Alice Hampson, FRAIA, President of Australian Institute of Architects; and Marco Antonio Vergara Vasquez, President, Federation of Architects Association of the Mexican Republic. Each of our honored guests will now have the opportunity to speak on their own work.
It's the most extraordinary honour to accept the President's Medal of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. I take this as a serious acknowledgement of the common work of our institutes, and that the issues of sustainability, resilience and equity are top of our common agenda. These are, for many architects across the globe, the only agendas. The future of our planet and our children and grandchildren hangs in the balance no matter where we live and work. For me, climate action also raises the possibility that we can improve the environment for everyone, while we also improve the conditions of architectural practice. To make our work smarter in reducing our carbon footprints and understanding our material supply chains, to work with others in going beyond the checklists and codes, to demand progressive laws and regulations that enshrine sustainability rather than pander to its advocates on a global scale. To work equitably and fairly in our design businesses, in our hiring practices, and in our professional associations around the world. Imagine a future in which architects, as the only government-regulated professionals in the construction industry, can be the primary and credible resources with the explicit training and qualification to lead the creation of a net zero built environment. Imagine the opportunities this future suggests. Imagine the net benefits for every community you can find an architecture firm or a solo practice. If you can imagine this, you can see what the future of ethical and equitable architecture looks like. You can begin to see that sustainable design begins with us and every colleague who practices architecture. In the end, our ethical choices define our work, our impact, and our place in a world that needs architects. We are uniquely positioned to do something good, something that makes people safer and healthier. We are uniquely positioned to create spaces and places that privilege no one and everyone at the same time. Thank you, President Brown, and thank you to every member of the RAIC for this honour.
As National President of the Royal Australian Institute of Architects, I'm profoundly honoured and delighted to be accepting this President Medal. Our countries have so much in common. They are similar in size, both by population and by area. Geographically, both countries have rich oceanic shores, rugged mountain ranges, and vast interior plains. Both are dotted with spectacular lakes, although the Canadian ones tend to contain water for more than a few weeks every decade. Canadians and Australians have fought side by side in virtually every modern major world conflict. We both enjoy the benefit of Indigenous populations who are at one with the rich landscape that they have nurtured for millennia. And we celebrate a diversity of cultural traditions drawn from every part of the world. One could almost call Canada and Australia soul sisters. But for me, what creates the greatest bond is that large tracts of land in both countries are practically uninhabitable, albeit for different reasons, with the result that we also share similarly sparse population densities. It is the magnificence and the beauty of nature, landscape and geography which unites our countries in my mind. Canada, with its northern location stretching to the Arctic, and Australia in the southern hemisphere, stretching down towards the Antarctica. Personally, I have a deep-rooted connection with Canada. I recall so vividly as a student, some 30 years ago, studying and edition of the Architectural Review with Bridget Sim and Howard Sutcliffe's Garden Pavilion and Reflecting Pool in Toronto. It furnished the cover with the most spectacular seductive image. I still have my felt-like, well-thumbed copy in my studio. It drew me in with their concern for the cultural and spiritual significance of combining architecture and landscape. That shelter project in the forested landscape, devoid of doors, windows and walls. Instead, it was ground-hugging retaining walls, landscaped water, a pump, clustered columns and a folded leaf roof. It was architecture, but barely a building. Significantly, it was a sacred moment in the continuum of the city's river valleys and forested landscape. Peter Zumthor speaks of presence as the gap in the flow of history, where all of a sudden it's not the past and it's not the future. It is our presence, our present, that deeply moves me. Over the last 12 months, nearly everyone across the globe has experienced some form of home confinement, where the architecture of the home becomes one's entire world. We as architects have the capacity, and indeed the obligation, to make that architecture the best we can, to enrich and uplift the spirit of all the lives with each and every line stroke we draw as we shape the walls that cocoon people's mortal existence. Beyond that, in our presence, in our present, we can shape the future in a once-in-a-generational opportunity to lead as knowledge leaders. For we remain, as architects, at the pencil point of the supply chain of the making of the building, well before the shovel ready. What a delight for me to be honoured with the President's Medal in the very same year that Bridget and Howard are awarded your Gold Medal. Thank you from me, Alice Hampson, and from the Australian Institute of Architects, and from Australia, your Southern Soul sister country. Good night.
Hi, my name is Marco Vergara. It's an honor for me and the organization that I represent to receive the President's Medal from the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. This medal represents the friendship between our two countries. I hope we can continue to work together, and proof of that is that in our 110th National Assembly that is going to be held next November, we're going to have the climate change and architecture as our main subject, so we can share our conclusions between your Congress and our Assembly and work together as North America to be part of this change. Thanks to the Board of Directors for choosing me and FECAR for this honor. See you later.
Our final group of award recipients for the evening are the 2021 Awards of Excellence. The Innovation in Architecture Award for 2021 is presented to Lemay Atelier 21 for the Grand Théâtre de Québec. The President's Award for Multimedia Representations of Architecture is awarded to the book Canadian Modern Architecture, 1967 to the Present, edited by Elsa Lamb and Graham Livesey.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Un immense merci pour cette distinction. Vous savez, un projet, ça ne se réalise pas tout seul, ça se réalise avec des gens passionnés, des gens audacieux, des gens qui nous aident à pousser les limites. Et je tiens à souligner ce soir vraiment la collaboration étroite, sans qui ce projet n'aurait jamais eu lieu. La collaboration étroite entre les gens de Pomerleau, notre entrepreneur, les gens de WSP, éléments, nos ingénieurs, nos deux bureaux aussi, donc nos équipes de Lemay et d'Atelier 21 avec qui le projet a été réalisé, et particulièrement de Christian Bernard, qui était le directeur projet avec qui j'ai eu un grand plaisir, mais avec qui j'ai appris énormément. Merci Christian. Le projet du Grand Théâtre était pour nous l'occasion aussi de réfléchir à notre patrimoine moderne. Ce patrimoine tout récent, parfois mal aimé, regorge vraiment de projets absolument exceptionnels. Et ces projets témoignent vraiment de l'époque dans laquelle ils ont été réalisés. Ici, l'œuvre de Victor Pruss est une œuvre unique. Le Grand Théâtre de Québec siège vraiment sur la colline parlementaire, mais ce qu'il préserve, c'est aussi l'œuvre de Jordi Bonnet qui, elle, recouvre 60% de ses murs intérieurs. Là où l'architecture et l'art se marient parfaitement, c'est tout avec cette solidité du béton qu'on imagine, et pourtant c'est une œuvre qui est fragile. Notre intervention visait vraiment à sa préservation, vraiment à stopper sa dégradation. Et pour ce faire, bien, on s'est vraiment penché sur comment Victor Pruss avait conçu son projet et comment on pouvait inscrire notre intervention en continuité avec l'œuvre de Victor Pruss. C'est ce regard qui nous a aidés à développer le projet, mais c'est aussi la ténacité de tous et chacun pour arriver à une solution simple, élégante, délicate, qui, en soi, existait par elle-même, mais qui venait aussi ajouter cette couche toute fine à l'œuvre de Victor Pruss. L'œuvre aujourd'hui, globale, est une œuvre où parfois en réflexion, on voit la ville, parfois en transparence, on voit l'œuvre de Pruss. C'est une œuvre à la fois théâtrale, mais c'est une œuvre à la base aussi de préservation. Merci à l'IRAC de reconnaître ce travail collaboratif, et merci encore une fois à tous les collaborateurs, à tous nos membres de nos équipes respectives, et merci à tous. Bonne soirée.
We are very pleased and honored to receive recognition from the RAIC for our book, Canadian Modern Architecture, 1967 to the Present.
Graham approached me about collaborating as co-editors for this book project back in 2014. To bring it to fruition took about 5 years, as well as the support of numerous institutions, archives, firms, and photographers.
While Elsa and I developed the general outline for the book, the chapters are each written by subject experts who we selected and approached. We are grateful that they all accepted the challenge. The book is built on the contributions of chapter authors George Baird, Brian Carter, Ian Chodikoff, Odile Henon, George Capellas, Lisa Landrum, Stephen Manel, Sherry Mackay, Marco Polo, Colin Ripley, Lola Shepard, David Theodore, Larry Wayne Richards, Adele Weeder, and Mason White.
We'd also like to acknowledge the significant funding support we received from the Canada Council for the Arts, as well as the material support from the co-publishers of the book, Princeton Architectural Press and Canadian Architect Magazine.
A book project is not unlike a building project. It's a long slog. But if you have a clear vision that drives the effort, it's incredibly satisfying to see it realized. Elsa and I saw that no comparable overview of Canada's modern and contemporary architecture existed, and that such a book would be an invaluable record and resource for professionals and students.
We started the research process by reviewing the entire 60-year back set of Canadian Architect magazine, and eventually found our way to covering the period, looking at Canadian architecture through international, national, regional, and local lenses.
It is very satisfying to know that the efforts of all the contributors to the book are being recognized, and that the book is finding its place in the landscape of Canadian architectural achievement. Thank you.
As we conclude tonight's celebration, I thank all of you for joining us this evening to celebrate the RAIC Annual Awards for 2021. Please consider submitting your projects for consideration to the RAIC 2022 Awards. Further details will be available this summer on the RAIC website at raic.org. I would also like to extend a special thank you to all our award recipients for their tremendous work and displays of excellence in Canada's built environment. Thank you. Good night.